two things that we were managed to win the number of seats. So, okay, let me be a bit more clear. So if there's 400 districts all over Thailand, then I look at 4C's framework thinking. I know GSP is not so far from here, but it's like private sector thinking, investment banking thinking, management consulting thinking of frameworks. So I had this 4C's framework, which is count, competitor, candidate, and constituencies. Count is the previous count from various times. So I look back 5 years. For this district, what were the trends? Then I look at the candidate of myself, whether they're strong, they're capable, they're young, do they have their own morale, character, and things like that. Then I look at the competitor, if they're a veteran, they've been there for 7 years, they get nothing done or something like that, then I know I address the competitive dynamics. And then constituencies, then I have the data points of, which district is aging, which district is younger than 40 years old, which district is pro-labor, which district is environmental prone. So I know exactly what the customers pretty much demand. So if I put 4C's together, out of 400 districts, the political canvas that I have, I focus on 160, not the total 400. And I got 151 from that 160. So that's what I meant by precision politics. And I was managed to divide districts into green color, yellow color, and red color. Red color is totally, absolutely no chance. Yellow color is swing states, swing districts. Green is ours. So I knew how to respond accordingly to this kind of planning, for example.
I think we have to concede that Harvard Kennedy School offers pretty good education, although we like to think FSI as well here. So it looks like a lot of people in the audience here and back home obviously are very knowledgeable about Thai politics, but I'm going to act like the least knowledgeable person here. It's not difficult to act like that about Thai politics and ask you about key players in Thai politics, obviously politicians, but also you speak about the military, about the monopolistic kind of economic players. And this is to the extent you can talk about the king, the royal family. How do they intersect and how do they shape your policy approaches?
So we are a constitutional monarchy, just like Japan, just like Britain, just like Denmark. And usually the monarchy is revered up top. But the players down here, we have 3 M's against 1 M. So he asked about stakeholders, right? So we have military, we have monopolies, and then we have the media. Against the mass, which is the voters. So we have the mass, we have the voters behind us. But the military, the monopoly, and the media have something to lose once I become the prime minister, obviously. But that's really the only option that Thailand can finally catch up with any other countries in ASEAN or in the world, is to demilitarize, demonopolize, and decentralize Thailand. So Bangkok is not Thailand and Thailand is not Bangkok. And finally, SMEs have that kind of chance to prosper with like the large companies, and also that we have a civilian government and we have a strong professional military that can protect us from external threat, but never mingle with the internal affairs like in the past. Military coup in Thailand 13 times, 20 constitutions. I think only number 2 behind Honduras. So the kind of intervention from the military to stop democracy within the past, let's say 100 years, Thailand became democratic in 1932. That's approximately about every 7 years that the military will intervene in. But it doesn't stop there in the sense that there's another group of independent organizations that are starting to emerge in the past 20 years. So if you want to stop democracy in Thailand for the past 100 years, let's say, they will do with judicial coups. That's the most traditional way. 13 times in almost until almost 2 decades before this. And then in the past 20 years, they switched from military coup to judicial coup. So they have the military track, now they have the judicial track that dissolve political parties, 36 to be precise. I'm party number 36. Politician number 252, because there were 251 politicians who got banned before me, including the father of the current prime minister. So instead of having just one arm to maneuver democracy through military power, military might, now they have the judicial path to do it. And they've been doing it for the past 20 years, and I'm the latest victim. Currently, this week, they open another path, which is the ethics path, morality path. So there's ethics committee that is directly or indirectly appointed by the military junta to have ethics weaponization. I mean, morality is good for politician as a compass to do something, but once it's weaponized, once it's selectively used, once it's unchecked, once it cannot be appealed, and disproportionately used, because if I'm found immoral, lifetime ban is the only penalty. Usually when it comes to these kind of things, you should have proportionality of law. The infringement is like this, the penalty is like this. I steal something, penalty is like this. I do drugs, penalty should be like this. I kill someone, penalty should be like this. But for this constitution, if I'm found immoral, even if I amend the law, I mean, I didn't go through corruption or sexual harassment or anything like that. The only penalty, if you are found immoral as a politician in Thailand, is a lifetime ban. So in a nutshell, they are trying to exterminate me from that 10-year ban that we laughed about to a political lifetime ban, political assassination. So to those audience in the back that might not understand, Thai democracy and the way you stop democracy, the democratic backsliding, the discreteness of it is military is one path, judicial is one path, ethics is one path. So they have many tools to play around with, and autocrats are becoming very smart, very discreet, because, if it's the first one, we'll be all over CNN. And Obama administration will stop making ties with us a little bit, not much. The Europeans will stop, but now with all these, they still have elections, but the way they do it, instead of violence on the street, it becomes violence in the courtroom. From warfare becomes lawfare. From military coup becomes judicial coup. And it's much more discreet way of, keeping elected politicians at bay and keeping democracy from flourishing at the moment.
So rule by law.
To stop change is devils is in the detail. And if we win more elections and dominate the ideas at the same time, finally it will reach that tipping point. And once you reach that tipping point, then it's a possibility of a constitutional amendment. But currently it's impossible to amend the constitution. I think it's very definite or absolute with 90% chance that the constitutional will not be amended before the next election, unfortunately, but we still have to keep pushing.
Would you say elections in Thailand are generally fair? Going for the next election, do you have any?
I think the audience answered.
What are your key concerns for the next election if it happens soon enough?
All the way from structural to behavioral. Gerrymandering obviously is becoming very strong. Voter suppression techniques, organizing election days that it's not impossible for people to go, using electoral laws that stop people from effective participation. Overseas voting is not possible for local election, it's only possible for national election, which meant tremendously during my time. I look at the numbers of Thais in New York, Thais in LA, Thais in Chicago, Thais in Sydney, Thais in South Korea, Thais in Tokyo and Osaka, and I round that up. It's a lot. I mean, it's a lot. It helped the voting turnout and gave me that election victory. But if they know that this is the way that you turn a lot of voting out, they will discourage overseas voting or advanced voting, and the voting turnout will drop. During 2023, the voting turnout was 78%. January, there was a provincial election. That number came down to 55%. So this is like voter suppression techniques by design, making sure that the ballot is quite far, making sure that it's always taking a long time inside the ballot, and voters fatigue is a third thing that I'm worried about. So from structural to behavioral, such as making politics boring, dirty, or relevant, so that the younger generations don't give a hoot about elections anymore. They feel like I don't want to listen to politics, or I don't want to get involved. I don't want to volunteer. I don't want to go and run for public office. And I think that's kind of my job, my sole task to meet with the Thais in Americans, whether they're interested in public policy or they're interested in politics. If they're interested in public policy, and if they're from computer science, if they're from the business school, if they're from education school, I have a path. I'm the bridge for you to really help Thailand. Some of them looked at me and was like, I'm going to run for public office when I return. I'm that kind of platform that coaches them or allows them to get into public office without compromising their own bank account and compromising their values, which I had done before. So I'm helping them out to make sure that these structural electoral laws, gerrymandering, voter suppression techniques, and voter fatigue by design through social media, through fake news operation to noises is not going to drive down voting turnout. Because I did a regression analysis. The only key success factor for my victory, the way I do grassroots politics, like the way I do it, is voting turnout. If the voting turnout is higher than 70%, I win. If it's lower than 70%, no matter how strong the candidate, no matter how weak the competitor, no matter how young the customers or the constituencies, I still lose. So it works like that between organized politics and unorganized, more of a grassroots rather than a patronage system in Southeast Asia or in South America or in Africa. So that's really important for me.
Great. That's a great message. I want to turn to international relations, international community, and how.
และมีจุดเด่นกว่านั้นคือไม่เคยคุยโตโอ้อวดทำงานก็ไม่ชอบเอาหน้า